So during the break I have a certain plan for you. So you'll be working in the evening. I'll explain it then.
War ja erst der Beginn der eigentlichen Tötungsgeschichten, nicht wahr?
Der offizielle. Getötet wurde er schon vorher.
Ja, aber
Sie haben ja schon 1941, ungefähr im November oder was, in Auschwitz, dass diese Gasvergasungsapparate schon bearbeitet hätten.
Jawohl, stimmt. Und die Wannsee-Konferenz war 42? 42. Jetzt aber, wieso? Denn es war eine Ermächtigungskonferenz gewesen, das heißt eine Ermächtigungskonferenz, eine Konferenz gewesen, wo Heinrich seine Ermächtigung bekannt gab, wenn schon getötet worden ist. Und es wurde getötet, denn ich habe ja doch Müller berichtet, nach 1941, nach dem Kriegsausbruch mit Russland, überlege ich jetzt, was war, ja gut, dann wird wahrscheinlich Strafverzusammenfassung und solche Sachen, das wird schon, ja, er ist eben gestaltet worden von Göring, bis dahin waren eben die Schwierigkeiten zu groß gewesen und zu viele Zentralen.
Ich sehe in der Tatsache, dass man Sie zur Wannsee-Konferenz herangerufen hat, eher einen Hinweis darauf, dass diese Aufgabe, die Endlösung des Judenproblems durch Vernichtung, da Sie damit zu tun hatten, Ihnen eine etwas prominentere Rolle gab, als Sie es darstellen wollten.
Nein, ich will es zugeben. Ich will es ohne weiteres zugeben. Aber jeder, der mich kannte, wusste ja schließlich endlich, wer ich bin. Ich war immer Dezernent gewesen im Amt 4B4 und ein Dezernent im Geheimstaatspolizeiamt. Der kann aus seinem Rahmen, in den er eingespannt ist, kann der gar nicht ausbrechen. Das geht überhaupt gar nicht.
War es üblich bei solchen beitragenden Konferenzen, wo die Spitzen zusammentraten, dass man die kleinen Referenten heranzog?
Ja.
Das war üblich so?
Ja, das ist nicht nur bei uns wohl gekommen, sondern jeder
sprechen durfte.
Ich bin ja auch in Leibach oder in Agram, glaube ich war das, bin ich runtergefohlen worden, wo Heinrich, aber die ist es nicht. Das ist sie. Die hat Himmler persönlich befohlen.
Hat diese Entscheidung etwas mit transporttechnischen Fragen zu tun? Das Schicksal der 4000 Kinder, die in ein Vernichtungslager geschickt werden?
Ja, Herr Hauptmann, in diesem Fall mit den Richtlinien zur Durchführung der Transporte. Denn das sind die Stellen des Befehlshabers mussten ja mit Richtlinien versehen werden. Und diese Richtlinien, die musste ich mir einholen. Die musste sich das Dezernat einholen.
Wollen Sie mir das Dokument zur Identifizierung unterschreiben?
Yes. I'm showing you now the photocopy number 20, dated 8/6/1960 from Paris. I believe this is a letter, Paris, the 21st/7th, 1942. The signature is of Dannecker. Eichmann says, yes, it is the Dannecker signature. The subject, deportation of Jews, 1, memoir. The 27th/7th, 1942, we have been telephoned by Obersturmbannführer Eichmann and the SS Obersturmbannführer Nochmann from the RSHA Bureau 4. They telephoned us. With SS Obersturmbannführer Eichmann, we discussed the question of the deportation of Jews. He decided that again the children could be deported to the government, to the territory of government general. Obersturmbannführer Novak assured to make possible, as from September 10 transports to the government general territory, comprising all sorts of Jews, the old men and also people are capable of working. Eichmann said that for the moment it would be impossible to ensure more than 10 transports, and that there are contacts with the French government so far as the continuation of arrest of other Jews is concerned. So far as the convoy from Bordeaux was concerned and which was cancelled, it was explained that as a result of a guarantee given by SS Sergeantenführer Dr. Knochen, chief of the French police Bouquet, not to take but other Jews but simply the stateless ones. And now a completely new situation had been created which troubled considerably the heads of Gestapo and as Obersturmführer Reitke made it clear that the situation here must also change. Eichmann, yes, this was the situation. You want to say something on the subject? Eichmann, yes, I remember the case of children. I heard about it. The decision, so far as the principle is concerned with regard to these children, had been taken by Himmler personally. The question was put to RSHA through the intermediary of Gruppenführer Müller. One said that this was the situation and we requested instructions. The question had not been solved by Müller nor by the chief of the RSHA, but it had been submitted to Himmler, and Himmler then decided to send those children away. Now I remember, Mr. Superintendent, when the question was brought, Less, the subject of Grand Mufti, yes. I said then that I remember a case of children. This is the case. Himmler himself gave orders on the subject. Less. Is this decision linked in any way to the technical questions of transports, the fate of 4,000 Jews which were sent to an extermination camp? Eichmann, yes, Superintendent. In this case, the instructions were clearly given with regard to these transports. It was necessary to receive those instructions. I had to get those instructions. My department had to get these instructions. Do you want to sign this document for identification? I would like you to show us the extract on page 711, starting with the question of Mr. Less. Können Sie nur noch eine Sache erklären?
Die Frage der Unerwünschtheit über Rückführung ausländischer Juden und die Einziehung des Vermögens von Juden. Was hat das mit transporttechnischen Fragen zu tun? Ja, Herr Hauptmann, daraus geht doch immer wieder hervor, dass Ihr Dezernat sich auch mit diesen Problemen beschäftigt. Zusätzlich zur Transporttechnik.
Ja, aber insofern ist es wichtig, weil diese Sachen ja Voraussetzungen überhaupt sind, um eine Evakuierung durchführen zu können. Denn es kann ja nicht so gehen, dass irgendwelche Beamte irgendeiner Evakuierungsbehörde einfach auf die Straße gehen und jetzt nun wahllos einfach jeden Juden, weil es nun heißt Judenabtransport, greifen und evakuieren. Das geht ja nicht. Sondern hier mussten all diese Diffizilitäten zuvor durch 4b4 bei den zuständigen Stellen, die ich das schon wiederholt sagen durfte.
Ich möchte Sie jetzt unterbrechen, denn das Tonband läuft ab. Wir werden das morgen dann weiter besprechen. Es ist jetzt genau 14 Uhr und 14 Minuten.
Can you explain one thing more, which I fail to understand? The question that it was not desirable to return Jews from abroad and the appropriation of their property. What does this have to do with technical matters of transport? Answer, yes, Mr. Superintendent. it transpires again and again that your department dealt with such matters. In addition to the question of transport, answer, yes, Mr. Superintendent, this is correct to a certain extent, because these are things one must bring into consideration before a deportation is possible. Because it is impossible that a certain authority goes onto the street, catches Jews, and arranges a transport because it is called the transport of Jews. This is impossible, and it was necessary to prepare all the necessary steps by IVB4. Question, I would like you to stop now because the tape is finished. We shall continue tomorrow. The time now is exactly 14 and 14 minutes. Eichmann, okay. Prosecution, I request page 716, the top of the page, please.
War das Reichsgesetz?
Now listen. You take now the part that
Oder sagen wir mal so, war die Endlösung der Judenfrage auch ein Reichsgesetz?
Die Endlösung der Judenfrage selbst, also ich meine jetzt mal diesen Sonderauftrag zum Beispiel, den Heydrich bekommen hat, um es mal ganz krass zusammen, die Tötung, war kein Reichsgesetz gewesen, das war ein Führerbefehl gewesen, ein sogenannter Führerbefehl gewesen, und Himmler und Heydrich und der Chef des Verwaltungs- und Wirtschaftshauptamtes haben sich als Chefs nun in diesen Führerbefehl geteilt. Nach der damaligen Rechtsauffassung, die allgemein war, hieß es, Führerworte haben Gesetzeskraft. Das ist eine bekannte Sache, die nicht nur in diesem Fall, sondern in allen Fällen, auch von allen Zentralinstanzen, entsprechend gewertet werden musste. Führerworte haben Gesetzeskraft. So hieß es immer und allenthalben.
Also das ist dann die Antwort auf meine Frage hin. Das von gestern.
Das war die Antwort, Herr Hauptmann, jawohl. Denn es war hier die Frage gewesen, die natürlich mit Recht gestellte Frage, Herr Hauptmann. Also waren die Aufgaben des Referates nicht nur rein transportmäßiger Natur. Herr Hauptmann hat mich so gefragt, nicht wahr? Ne?
Sie waren nicht rein transportlicher Natur.
Natürlich war das nicht rein transportmäßiger Natur, aber die Richtlinien waren ja die Voraussetzung überhaupt zur Durchführung.
Es war hier eine Sondermission, richtig? Es war doch eine Sonderaufgabe, die gelöst werden musste, die Vernichtung der Juden, die, wie Sie sagen, sie von oben bekamen. Daraus ergaben sich dann diese diversen Probleme. Aber
sicher,
nichts
aber nicht
direkt mit, wie Sie wollten doch immer die Sache darstellen, als ob Sie lediglich hier ein Transportofficer gewesen seien. Und nichts mehr.
Was in der Regel auch gewesen ist, Herr Hauptmann.
Aber Sie müssen sich, mit der Rede will nicht unterbrechen, wenn, wie es aus all diesen bisher gezeigten Dokumenten ja hervorgeht, war Ihre Aufgabe weit größer. Sie hatten sich aktiv in diese Sachen einzumischen. Ob Sie nun von irgendeiner Seite aufgrund eines vorhergegebenen Befehls handelten, ist dabei meines Erachtens belanglos. Tatsache ist, dass neben der Transportfrage, der transporttechnischen Frage, wie Sie es nannten, Sie sich auch mit Gebieten befassten, die mit der transporttechnischen Frage bestimmt nichts zu tun hatten.
Darf ich jetzt?
Bitte, stimmen Sie dem zu?
Herr Hauptmann, das Dezernat 4B4 hat nie Tötungsbefehle bekommen. Nie. Damit hat das Referat 4B4 nichts zu tun gehabt. Sondern es ist der reine transportmäßige Teil gewesen, zu dem selbstverständlich, wie ich ja angegeben habe, die Voraussetzungen notwendig waren. Denn ich sagte schon gestern, glaube ich, dass es natürlich nie so gehen konnte, also zum Beispiel Befehl für Paris oder Den Haag oder Brüssel, hier 1000 Mann in einen Zug hinein, sondern da mussten Richtlinien erstellt werden. Die Leute mussten ja, die Evakuierungsbehörde musste ja wissen, was und welcher Personenkreis. Diese Feststellung hat selbstverständlich, das muss ich zugeben, das Referat 4b4 an diese Stellen gemäß den vorliegenden Weisungen und Befehlungen der Vorgesetzten von 4b4 weitergegeben.
Was this the law of the Reich? Let us say, was the final solution of the Jewish problem also the law of the Reich, Eichmann? The final solution of the Jewish question itself, and I'm referring now to the special task which was given to Heydrich, and I want to emphasize this, that putting to death was not the law of the Reich, it was the order of the Führer, what was called the order of the Führer, and Himmel and Heydrich, at the head of the Central Office for Administration, divided the matters out between them in accordance with the order of the Führer. In accordance with the legal conceptions of the time, which were commonly accepted, the words of the Führer had the force of law. This was a well-known matter. It was not only in this question, but in all the matters. As far as all the central authorities were concerned, they had to deal with these matters in a fitting manner. The words of the Führer had the force of the law. This applied in every place. As far as all the central authorities were concerned, they had to deal with these matters in a fitting manner. The words of the Führer had the force of the law. This applied in every place. Less. Is this then the reply to my question? Now, Eichmann, yes, this was yesterday too. You put the question correctly yesterday. Were the targets or the objectives of my department only those of transport? Well, were they not beyond the transport matters as well? It is true, there were duties beyond transport, but these instructions were a preliminary condition for implementation. Was there not a special objective which you had to carry out, the extermination of the Jews, as you said, you received from on high as an instruction? Eichmann, yes. There was nothing direct. I wanted always to explain the matter so, as if I was a transport officer, nothing more. And this, in fact, was the case, Mr. Chief Inspector. Here a certain part of the remarks of both of of Eichmann and the Chief Inspector are not clear. Less, it would appear that your duties went far beyond this, that you had to be active in regard to these matters. The question is, it is quite unimportant whether you acted in these matters in terms of instructions which you received from elsewhere. You were not only engaged in what you call technical matters, but you also dealt with matters which could not be regarded just as technical. Do you agree to this, Mr. Chief Inspector? 4B4 department never got instructions to exterminate Jews, nor did 4B4 have any contact with these matters, but it had simply the duty of transportation. I said yesterday, I believe, that it could never have been so from an administrative point of view. For example, the order for Paris or Hague or Brussels, 1,000 people to be put on a train. The evacuating authority had to know with what groups or categories of people to deal. I admit that Department 4B4 continued to deal with these matters in accordance with the instructions it received from its superiors. I request the next extract from page 724.
Bin ich nach der Jurisprudenz der Beihilfe schuldig, das ist selbstverständlich. Das sehe ich ein, da versuche ich auch, da kann ich gar nicht versuchen, mich etwa davon drückend ausreden.
So, aber in all Ihren Erklärungen verstecken Sie sich doch immer wieder, versuchen sich zurückzuziehen, zu verstecken hinter, das war nicht mein Ressort, das war nicht mein Gebiet, das waren die Vorschriften, die ich bekam, das gehörte zur Reichsbahn und so weiter und so weiter.
Ja, das muss ich ja machen, Herr Hauptmann, denn als Dezernent 4W4 bin ich ja nun wirklich nicht für alles zuständig gewesen, sondern eben nur für mein relativ eng umrissenes Aufgabengebiet. Und dieses eng umrissene Aufgabengebiet, das ist ja jederzeit feststellbar, denn es war ja eine Zentralinstanz gewesen.
Please, Mr. Less. You say that you had no part in the extermination? Eichmann, that is correct. Less. But the transports were arranged for the extermination and people were sent to the slaughter. Eichmann, yes, that is true, to the extent, Mr. Chief Inspector, that I received instructions to evacuate people. But not every person whom I evacuated was put to death. This was out of the scope of my knowledge, who was put to death or not. Otherwise, at the final count, one wouldn't have found 2,400,000 Jews. Less. Yesterday I answered you on this question, and I told you that you can't have to your credit the fact that those Jews were found as survivors. That was to the credit of the Allies after the final victory in the war. Had the war continued, even those 2 million Jews would not have been found alive because your program was complete extermination of the Jews. Eichmann, not my program, because I had no connection with this program, Mr. Chief Inspector. Less. Certainly you had connection with this program. Eichmann, yes, I suppose for collaboration I am guilty. This is quite clear. There's a correction for my work in assisting this program, I am guilty. This is quite clear. To this extent, I certainly cannot abdicate from responsibility, and I couldn't attempt to do this, because in legal terms I'm certainly guilty of being an accomplice to this. This I see clearly myself, and I accept this. Less. We're not speaking here about legal terms, but about the facts. Eichmann, yes. But I refer on the basis of the facts to jurisprudence. In terms of jurisprudence, I could be regarded as an accomplice, and I understand that. And therefore I'm trying, I cannot absolve myself or make excuses, absolve myself from this responsibility. Less. But you keep on trying to make efforts in all your replies to say that this wasn't your area of authority, these were just instructions which you received, that this belonged to the Reich Transport Office, and so on. Yes, I was compelled to do this, Mr. Chief Inspector. As head of the Department 4B4, I certainly had no authority in regard to all these matters, but only in regard to the targets which were within the province of my department. Within the narrow limits here I could work because this was obviously a central authority.
מרלס, במה דנה ההודעה לפני הקטע המתחיל בשאלתך בעמוד 855, hier auf Seite 8, im ersten Absatz.
Mr. Less, replying to a query from the Attorney General, says that here a further extract refers to a report with regard to the Wannsee Conference.
Hier auf Seite 9 am ersten Absatz wird dann Folgendes gesagt. Ich zitiere aus dem Satz heraus. Bezüglich der Behandlung der Endlösung in den von uns besetzten und beeinflussten europäischen Gebieten wurde vorgeschlagen, dass die in Betracht kommenden Sachbearbeiter des Auswärtigen Amtes sich mit den zuständigen Referenten der Sicherheitspolizei...
זה ב-856, לא? איפה זה פה?
The President of Court corrects and remarks that the recording should start from page 855 of the tape. This is the finished.
אבל כוונתי להשמיע את הקטע המתחיל בשאלתו של מרלס באמצע העמוד 855.
I can't hear a thing, do you?
Schwere physische Arbeit leisten. Nicht genug zu essen bekommt. Er wird schwächer. Er wird so schwach, dass er einen Herzschlag sicher wird, wenn das würde sicherlich voll als natürliche Verminderung gemeldet worden sein von den Zuständigen Stellen im Osten und wäre selbstverständlich dann im Reichssicherheitshauptamt unter diesen Rubrik natürliche Verminderung gefallen, weil es ja so gemeldet worden ist. Insofern selbstverständlich, ja. Hier auf Seite 8 im ersten Absatz fährt dann Heydrich fort. Der allfällig endlich verbleibende Restbestand wird, da sich bei diesem zweifellos um den widerstandsfähigsten Teil handelt, entsprechend behandelt werden müssen, da dieser eine natürliche Auslese darstellen, bei Freilassung als Keimzelle eines neuen jüdischen Aufbaus anzusprechen ist. Was bedeutet hier entsprechend behandelt werden müssen? Ja, diese Sache, die stammt von Himmler mit natürlicher Auslese. Das ist sein Steckenpferd, natürliche Auslese. Ja, aber was bedeutet hier? Getötet, sicher. Sicher. Hier auf Seite 9 am ersten Absatz wird dann Folgendes gesagt. Ich zitiere aus dem Satz heraus. Bezüglich der Behandlung der Endlösung in den von uns besetzten und beeinflussten europäischen Gebieten wurde vorgeschlagen, dass die in Betracht kommenden Sachbearbeiter des Auswärtigen Amtes sich mit den zuständigen Referenten der Sicherheitspolizei und des SD besprechen. Der hier erwähnte zuständige Referent, bezieht sich das auf Sie? Das würde sich auf mich beziehen, ja. Darf ich mal sehen, bitte? Wurde vorgeschlagen, dass die in Betracht kommen, sagt er alles. Das wurde also offenbar, wurde das von dem Vertreter des Auswärtigen Amtes, wer war das hier gewesen, von Unterstaatssekretär Luther, wurde also offenbar vorgeschlagen, nicht offenbar, selbstverständlich geht er hier daraus hervor, dass die in Betracht kommen, Sabber des Auswärtigen Amtes mit den zuständigen Referenten Sicherheitspolizei und des SD in Verbindung setzen. Das wäre ich gewesen, jawohl.
Here on page 8, in the first paragraph, Heydrich continues, with those who are likely to remain in the end, one will have to treat in a suitable way, because this will certainly be those fit more than others to stand the ordeal, and they must be regarded as a choice made by nature for a seed for the rehabilitation and regrowing of the Jewish people if they are freed. What is this question of suitable treatment, Eichmann? This originated with Himmler, choice made by nature. This was an expression he liked very much. Less. What does it mean in this context? Eichmann, killed, of course. Less. Here on page 9, in the first paragraph, it is said, and I quote, regarding the treatment for the final solution in the taken areas and areas under our influence, it was proposed that those in charge of sections will come and hold council with the head of the security police. The authorized head of department, does that concern you, Eichmann? Yes, this would concern me. May I see the document again, please? It was proposed that those who were concerned, it seems that it was suggested by a representative of the Foreign Office, or maybe by Luther. It was proposed, it seems, this is self-explanatory, because those who are concerned, the officers of the Foreign Office, should get in touch with the head of the security police. That would mean me. Mr. Less, the part in the declaration on page 932, answer by witness. This is a result from the question I posed on page 931, where I asked the accused if the reports or the conversations held between his representatives and his assistant, the accused assistant, with other institutions, were held with his knowledge and with his consent. Prosecution thanks the witness and requests the reading of page 932, the question put by Mr. Less to the accused.
Denn Eichmann war nicht so dumm und so primitiv, dass nicht erkennen konnte, was mit oder ohne Befehl tat. War ein Mordbeamter und wusste es, solange es war. Hatte damals weder Hemmung noch den Drang, sich auf Befehlsnotstand zu berufen. Und würde die Verantwortung dafür und auf sich nehmen müssen. Das letzte ist Journalistengeschwätz. In meiner Einstellung, die gewesen ist, dass ich meinem Fahneneid getreu gehorche, so kann man daran nicht rütteln und nicht deutlich machen. Journalisten, ja, die können das. Romanschriftsteller können das auch. Es ist jetzt 16:15 Uhr und wir brechen ab.
The President of Court, Mr. Hausner, on page 2669, and the President of Court reads out in German a few lines, maintaining that he did not hear it on the tape. The prosecution, it is printed according to the signed transcription, and the court will be able to examine this. In the copy signed by the accused, the President maintains he did not hear the certain sentence in the tape. The prosecution, I believe it is on the tape. We shall examine the tape. Less. I would like now to read before you some cuttings from a German illustrated paper, Der Stern, volume 28 of the 9th of July, 1960. There was an article about you in that paper. I do not read the whole article, but only the parts out of this article. Here we read as follows. And thus he writes, and that means you, on the front page of the book, the Atom by Franz Kahn. I read this book like other books, and I find in this book confirmation to the belief in the social God, social national God, because this is connected very weakly with the communist trend of thought and the severity of Lenin, which is in Marx's way of thought. I warn my children of to beware and not mix the two trends of thought in one pot. The Hellenistic Marxistic trend of thought is very severe. The belief in God is more from the heart and natural and always alive. But I regret that the pride and haughtiness of my three sons, this means only empty words, and therefore I am sorry. Do you remember such words? Eichmann replies, a search was conducted in my house after I was removed from there, and this I conclude from what I see now. I did write such an article because my sons were so disinterested in their intellectual development, and shall we say in the development of their gifts, that this was meant as a warning to them. Less. And later we find on page 58, he told them what he prepared for himself as a justification and excuse. Their father is being searched and is accused of atrocious deeds, but this is not right. He was always an officer, true and faithful to his duty, and obeyed orders, but he was never a jailer. This is also true. And then it continues, to his friends he admits who he is and conducts endless conversations. He reads everything that has been published about his office and the Jewish problem. He holds on desperately to what remained as a justification to his deeds, that he has an oath to the flag and was obedient to his superiors. Everyone who deviated from this way and behavior, who during the last years of the Reich put the human feeling against the obeying orders, aroused the hatred of Eichmann. He calls the book, he reads the book, Gerhard Bolt, The Last Days of the Reich. And while reading, he discovered that Bolt did not obey his Führer's orders to the last iota. And one knows Eichmann's reactions from the marginal remarks. On the dust cover, it says a young front officer, and that means Bolt, and Eichmann underlines the word front officer and writes scoundrel. He carries on doing it in the all through the book. Wherever the name Bold is mentioned, he underwrites scoundrel, traitor, etc. In one part of the book where Bold relates that during the last days of the SS, all of a sudden SS high-ranking officers who were proud and haughty became very small and needed support. The writer of this book, Eichmann remarks, is an Arschloch, and is idiotic as a swine. Dolz is the name of this swine. That is Eichmann's remarks on the margins of the book. In another place, Eichmann writes that this author should have been skinned alive because he's so low. With such scoundrels, we had to lose the war. And finally, on the last pages of the books, Eichmann sums up. 1. Each one can live according to his belief. 2. But then he should not be an officer, because an officer must obey orders according to the oath he has given to his flag. And again, this is once more the straw he holds on to, obeying orders and loyalty. And to his defense, he develops and shows a vocabulary which he did not have at the time. He helped cold-bloodedly and strictly to bring about the solution of the Jewish problem. Would you have made such marginal remarks? Eichmann replies, yes, I did make those remarks, but if when such things are being reported, then it is not fair that the straw I held on was something new. I always had this straw to hold on, and this was my principle. This is the demand put by Kant, and this became my guiding principle in life. According to this demand, I planned my life and did not stop when I preached to my sons and taught them. When I thought that they were lazy, disinterested in continuing their education, I tried also, and to a certain measure, this is correct, I wanted to make them think. Less. He writes in this very same article, he also reads the testimony of his friend Dieter Wislitzeny, his superior, in the trials, and is very angry that Wislitzeny, like many others, tried to shift the burden onto Eichmann's shoulders to save his own skin. And he defines Wislitzeny with remarks in the book always as a swine and as a buttocks with ears. He's also full of anger and denies Wisliceny's report about a sentence which Eichmann said during the last days of war. And if it must be, I shall jump to the pit gladly, knowingly that 5 million Jews were killed. The literal explanation is correct, but only one word. I did not say Jews, I said enemies of the Reich. And in this way, this sentence is very natural, because when our enemies destroy our Reich, I am glad to hear of every enemy killed. Later, there is a lengthy explanation which he could not say 5 million Jews because much less than 5 million were killed. It does not make any difference if there were 2, 3, 5 or 7 millions. This he does not argue about. Did you express such opinions of Wislitzeny? Did you... Yes, this is quite possible that I did say so to Wislitzeny. While reading this book, when this book came to my hands, a book or an illustrated paper belonging to me, then while reading, when I grew with a holy anger, I'd take the pencil in my hand and jot down remarks what seemed important to me at the moment I was reading. Less. He goes on to write, Friends and acquaintances who conversed with him in the Argentine describe him as a man broken spiritually. He did acknowledge his guilt, but did not dare to admit his guilt to his own self. He was looking for justifications, formal justifications, so that he would not have to sit in judgment upon himself. Eichmann, this is not true. This is journalistic gossip. Less. And now, Eichmann's conscience. Eichmann justifications, so that he would not have to sit in judgment upon himself. Eichmann, this is not true. This is journalistic gossip. Less. And now, Eichmann's conscience. Eichmann, I became tired to be a wanderer between the worlds. The voice of my heart, and no one can escape the voice of one's heart, always whispered about coming to peace with myself. I wanted to come to peace with my enemies. This may be a part of the German character and makeup. I was the last to wish to come before the German authorities, had I not had the fear that the political side of the whole matter may be too large and too big to bring to a conclusion this subject. I am far from questioning the just sentence by a German court, but it is not clear to me yet what is the legalistic position. The person who once upon a time used to be given orders and had to obey them at the time and to implement them. What would be the position of the court towards such a person? I was only a subordinate of the SS and an officer of the security police of the Reich, loyal, true, diligent, and full of feelings towards my fatherland, and of which I am proud to have been a member. I was never a scoundrel or a traitor in my character, and in spite of strict personal criticism, I wish to say that I was not a murderer and not a mass murderer. In the same way, my subordinates were not murderers and not mass murderers. But in order to be true to the truth, to the hair width, I would accuse myself of helping the killings, because I executed the orders for deportation, and at least a part of those deported, if by a different unit, were put to death. I said that I must accuse myself of assisting the killings if I will pronounce upon myself strict judgment, but I still do not see clearly if I am privileged to say so about my subordinates. I am here, I am still have an inner conflict because a subordinate, a small official, this must be understood, cannot be holier than the Pope. My subjective standing regarding what happened was my faith and belief in the emergency of the situation of the German nation and the preachings of the Reich at the time. Later, the belief that the total war was a necessity, and I had to believe and go on believing the declarations of the German Reich leadership at the time. A victory in that total war or the destruction of the German people. And if this was my opinion, I fulfilled my duty with a clear conscience and a believing heart, the duty I was asked to perform. Of course, are these the things you said, is the question by Less. Eichmann, yes, I do not remember where I gave those declarations, but these are my words, I identify them. I do not know where I made this declaration, where I wrote these words. Where or where from, this I cannot remember clearly. Less. And here as follows, that the same Eichmann did not turn to be beastly, not a beast and not blunt feelings. He testifies himself that he was even sensitive, and in spite of that, this very same man signed knowingly on orders for deportation, which meant death to hundreds of thousands of people. A terrible example of the general misunderstanding, the turning of the First Prussian office, which continually and above the obeying orders, then the responsibility of those who received orders, and under the swastika only one half remained, the obeying orders of the corpses. And for this forgery, for this murderous killing, he relies on the swearing loyalty to the flag. This is an experiment hopeless, because Eichmann was not so primitive and not as foolish. He knew what he did, if it was according to an order or not according to an order. He knew he was an officer murdering people. He had no self-restraint.
Weiß ich allerdings nicht. Und das wäre alles, Herr Hauptmann, was ich zu dem Sternartikel zu sagen habe.
Less, today is the 20th of September 1960. We shall put on now reel number 56. The time is 9:57 a.m. Eichmann. As an appendix to the last tape, which you read out to me, Mr. Chief Inspector, certain extracts from an article in Der Stern, which appeared this year. May I say a few more things in order to complete the picture? I wrote, so it is suggested, Mr. Inspector. You read out extracts to me. You didn't read out the whole article, so that I myself don't know in what context this was written. You apparently, it was stated that I wrote that I was an accomplice to the act of murder. If that sentence, single sentence, had been written there, this is not in consonance with the truth, because in fact I wrote as follows. I cannot give this word by word, but approximately. Approximately in 1953 to 55, I said that I would unhesitatingly declare myself as an accomplice to acts of murder if also those who, on the basis of instructions which they received for the deportation of Jews old and young, would also proclaim themselves accomplices to acts of murder and would also be punished by the powers which were then the enemies of Germany. So apparently I wrote, millions of tens of thousands of Germans without number were also expelled, and these people have not yet been accused of crimes against humanity, but I've often read that these people go free and without any stain on their character. And I continue to write, so long as they use here 2 yardsticks, I do not feel myself guilty at all, but on the contrary, innocent of crime, because I acted only in accordance with instructions which I received, just as they did. In connection with this, I also dealt with Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and also the wars and expulsions and murders which took place after 1945, at any rate without any connection with World War II in other parts of the world. Naturally, in terms of modern jurisprudence, in accordance with the principles of the first Nuremberg trial, let us say the precedent of the first Nuremberg trial, from a formal legal point of view, I'm an accomplice to the crime of murder. But according to my estimate, I continued to write, this is a one-sided interpretation of the law, and apparently this law has only got validity with regard to the Germans, according to the principle vae victis, woe to the conquered. With regard to the descriptions of the Stern of my own character and my oath to the flag and to orders, I can only say that these are foolish expressions, because these things I could not disclose only in the Argentine, but these refer to basic matters which concern everybody in uniform at all times. It certainly is very saddening that things like this take place between men, but I didn't invent them, nor did I give orders about them, nor could I stop them. And finally, although this may be less interesting in this context, but I've also been thinking about this, with regard to the quotations from the book, which I noted down in my book. And here I'd like to say that the things which I wrote down in my private notebooks should not interest anybody else, so long as I don't loan out these books to anybody else, and I did not do so. How der Stern got possession of these a few of these private books, I had no idea. At any rate, this is all, Mr. Chief Inspector, that I want to say with regard to the article in der Stern.
Dass das ganze jüdische Volk, die ganzen Juden Europas vernichtet werden müssen? Eichmann, Herr Hauptmann, wenn man mir um jene Zeit gesagt hätte, dein Vater ist ein Verräter, also mein eigener Vater ist ein Verräter, und ich hätte ihn zu töten, hätte ich das auch getan. Ich habe damals stur meinen Befehlen gefolgt und stur meinen Befehlen Gehorsam geleistet, und daran habe ich meine, wie soll ich mal sagen, meine Erfüllung gefunden und hatte meine Beruhigung in diesem, wie es hieß, und wie wir uns ja nicht anders darunter vorstellen konnten, Schicksalskampf des deutschen Volkes, egal was man mir für einen Auftrag gegeben hätte, Herr Hauptmann.
Less. Yes,
did you see in the question of the to be or not to be of the German people the solution in the extermination? Could we start again, says the judge to the interpreter. Could you start again, please? Did you actually see in the to be or not to be question of the Jewish people the solution in the extermination of the entire Jewish people and of the Jews of Europe? Do you think that for the existence and survival of the German people they were to be extirpated? Eichmann, Superintendent, if they had told me at that time, your father is a traitor, and if I knew that my own father was a traitor and I was to kill him, I would have done it without any hesitation whatsoever. I was obeying blindly to orders, and I fulfilled those orders in blind obedience, and thereby I found my self-fulfillment and gratification. And I was fully satisfied with the fulfilling of the orders. This was for us the fateful war of the German people, and whatever task would devolve upon me or would be thrust upon me, I would have fulfilled it blindly and with enthusiasm. These are the passages which at this stage we wanted to bring to the attention of the court. Of course, so far as the testimonies are concerned, there would be some other passages which will be at a later stage.